Hey everybody, it's Ken. I'm here with my good buddy Kyle Wilson. Hey Kyle.
Hey Ken.
So he flew in and he's interviewing all these incredible people, and I was so excited that he's in Scottsdale with us today. So I've watched you through masterminds and through coaching and marketing, make people 10, 20, 30 million a year. I've watched it. I've watched your clients just blow up. And it's interesting. We talk a lot of times about these sales funnels, and it's kind of the same. The sales funnel's not a unique concept, but you talk about the sales wheel. It's very different. I think it's much, much better. It's super strategic and you can measure it. So can you chat a little bit about the sales wheel and how it works? Because I think there's a lot of people out there, searching for success in their own personal life, in their own business, in their own real estate, whatever it might be. And I know for sure you're going to have some nuggets of wisdom here from certainly being around all these, big minds all your life.
No, thank you, Ken. So I think for me, I grew up in a small town, never went to college. I was a decent little salesperson, but I didn't really know marketing. And I got in the seminar business, and the seminar business is you go make 100 calls a day to then, book a couple of talks to go speak, to sell tickets to a seminar. And pretty soon you have to start figuring out why people buy, and, those wheels start turning. Then they come to an event, and then are they going to buy product? Then when you're speaking, how to get referrals? And so for me, that's sales. But when you start talking marketing is one to many. I had to start figuring marketing out. And I really didn't have any mentors, but I kept having success. And so things kept expanding to the point that in 1993, I was filling up huge rooms, hiring Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Og Mandino to come speak at my events. Then I had the opportunity to partner with Jim. And what that looked like, because Jim's previous companies had failed, so I knew he didn't really want to do a partnership. So we did a handshake where I said, it'll be my company, I'll pay for everything, but I want an exclusive to market you. And I'll pay you off the top. So you don't have to ever worry about expenses. I'll pay you off the top on speaking, and I'll go create product. And he said, okay, and we shook hands, and that handshake for 10 years, right? We had a handshake, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
But and here's why. Because it was based on bringing value.
Yeah.
The deal is...
Which is one of his philosophies.
Right. So that was our common philosophy. How do I bring so much value? Who else would he want to partner with?
Right.
And vice versa, which is a phenomenal way, right, to have relationships. But the very first thing I did, I said, okay, I got Jim, and I got a sheet of paper out and drew a big circle. And I put Jim at the hub. And so it's this big circle, a wheel, right? He's the hub, and then each spoke was a product or service he had. He had a book, he had an audio series, and he had a 1-day seminar and a 2-day seminar. I said, okay. If they go to his 1-day, I bet I can sell them the 2-day. Now, if they get his book through Simon & Schuster, there's no promotion to us, so I got to call Simon & Schuster, figure if they'll put in, give us something to work. There were no websites. This is pre-internet.
Yeah.
We give a phone number. Like when I partnered with Jim, he had no list. I got nothing. So like
That's
nothing.
just incredible to me, right?
Zero.
Yeah.
In that first year, by the way, I took him from 20 speaking dates at $4,000 to 110 dates at $10,000, then raised his fee to $25,000. Then business was booming so much, we started another company, Your Success Story, where I started booking all the other speakers. So this stuff works, right? But it began with this little thing, and here was the big question. So you got the wheel, you got the spokes, you got the hub. The big question for me is, how do I get more people on the wheel? Okay, if I can get them on the wheel and they go from a 1-day to a 2-day, great. If they get the book, would they go to a seminar? Great. But how do I get more people on the wheel? Because I don't have many people. And that caused me to philosophically have to figure out, and I always say marketing, number one, is how do you connect the dots, right? It's not about being manipulative. It's not about, all these clever things. It's just connecting the dots. It's the same thing in your business, just common sense. If you look around, you take the competition, you take the marketplace, you take all these variables and you start connecting. How do I connect what I do with a prospect or a customer? And so I had to do that. And so my rules now, which I didn't have defined at the time, I just intuitively did it, but the rules now, they look like, if you're going to create a spoke, number one, it's got to be part of your core business. So I said, I need a product to get people on the wheel and take them around. What's that look like? Number one, it's got to be part of our core business. Number two, it has to reach the avatar I'm trying to reach. Number three, and this is the biggest, it has to be part of your secret sauce. What makes Jim different? And I remember this is exactly how it happened. I'm putting together a corporate packet because Jim only had 20 speaking dates for 4,000. I'm putting together a corporate packet, and I never tell this story. So you got the exclusive.
Awesome.
And I'm trying to figure out, when they open this, why is Jim going to be any different than the other 10,000 speakers? And I thought, it's his profound wisdom. He says things in the most incredible way. And I thought, maybe I take a piece of paper and I type a bunch of Jim Rohn quotes. So that's how the idea began. And I slip in all these Jim Rohn quotes. And then I saw the fold, and I thought, is there a little booklet I can slide in the fold? So when they open it, here's this little booklet. That's literally how it began. Then I got excited because I'd been promoting Jim for 3 or 4 years, even before we partnered, and I knew his fans were the biggest fans. Like, you would meet, Tom Hopkins or Brian, you'd meet all these people that loved their guys, but no one loved people more than Jim Rohn. People loved Jim Rohn. There just weren't many of them. And so I knew they could become our advocates if I could give them the right tools. So very quickly it went from, how do I take Jim to book him for more corporate, to how do I get this army of advocates to go share the message, back to more my entrepreneurial side. So the wheel I'm describing is more entrepreneurial. It's books, CDs, 1-day events, 2-day events. And then there was the corporate side. Now, the cool thing about the corporate side, that's also a product on the wheel that gets more people. Because if Jim's speaking in front of 1,000 people, that's 1,000 more potential prospects, right? So it all drives one another, but it all began with that idea. So then this idea for a quote book came, and it really was, in my mind, like a God download. I remember it just came to me. It's like I saw this little booklet. And then I started talking. We came up with the leatherette, the foil. So I'm about to give this to you, right? But then I left space for you to personal note. Then I thought, hey, if someone gave this away, if that person thought that's cool, would they want to buy some? So then the next page, and it's been changed, the people that bought me changed it up, right? They had design people that didn't get the concept.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
But it showed how you could buy them in multiples. And then in the back, I put my catalog of all the products we had. And sure enough, ended up moving 6 million of these, by the way. But it was all based on this principle of the wheel, the spokes. So here's the beauty of the wheel. You get people on the wheel. Now you bring value. It's, Robert Helms talks about farming, and I love the farming analogy, and I like that analogy actually best, but when we're talking about the wheel, it's kind of about fishing. So fishing and hunting. So when you're fishing, you just put out good bait, and then when people are ready, they say yes. So the wheel is, how do I talk to an audience, bring value, and occasionally give them a reason to raise their hand? Right? And when you give them that reason, those that are ready bite, right? And then that's your product or service. But it's not an agenda-driven funnel.
Right. Which is massively important, by the way.
So here's what happens. There are people, this is how my whole world operates. No one hardly ever does anything immediately. They reach out, they say, Kyle, that's great. Love you. Heard all this great stuff. If I try and close them, it's probably not going to work. And that's too much work for me. It's not, you can't do one to many if you're trying to do that. Almost all the biggest people I work with, it's after time. They're on my email list. They're getting my 52 lessons. And eventually one of them hits at the right time. And I've always been interested in who buys. There's no one in my world that I don't know the genesis of how they found me. That's what I'm always asking. So where'd you come from? It's so important. It's the heartbeat.
You know what? I don't want to break your mojo here, but
it's good.
You know what I was just thinking of was, like, it's so different now. Like, people think it's hard. You did this when, there were
no internet, no email,
no spreadsheets, phone numbers,
yeah.
Right? How did you?
I had to get mailing addresses. So I'd go buy the Nightingale Conant list.
It's crazy.
But I would connect the dots. And it's like what I did, I came out with a new program I created, the weekend seminar. I went and sold it. And when you shrink wrap, I included the quote book. Well, I knew I had another product lined up with Nightingale Conant. And then they called me. They said, hey, and I gave it as a bonus, can we buy some of those quote books? And I'm like, yes, you may. And sure enough, they included the quote book, which had my complete catalog in the back.
Nice.
And I remember the day I went to my mailbox. One day it's empty. The next day, and it's like 3 days after they launched that product, it was packed with orders.
That's awesome.
And our phones were ringing off the hook. And it just takes some of those, but I mean, like 1,000 of those. But that's the connecting the dots over a period of time process.
So I love how you started with sales and marketing because they're very different. And I think a lot of people think that they're the same. They're definitely not. How were you driving people, more people onto the sales wheel? I know through the books and things like that, but what are some of the other things that you were doing to get people to show up?
Yeah. So I had to do mine through events. And so I would buy a list and I would market to the list. I would go speak at companies. But then, so here was the big promoter mistake. I was a promoter. There were all these other promoters. No one was collecting a list. They were starting over every time they went to a new city. They started over. I'm like, that's so silly. You spend, 3 months of your life in a city, you fill up the room. Yeah, you sell a bunch of product, but then they moved on. I started building an email list or a mailing list pretty early. And if they attended a Jim Rohn seminar, when this came out, I started mailing to them. And there's all kinds of stuff. I remember Jeffrey Gitomer was in every business journal in America. I kind of discovered Jeffrey in a lot of ways. And I brought him into my world, brought him into TPN. So he would do articles about Jim Rohn in the quote book. Hey, if you want a quote book, send a fax. And, you just start doing everything, right? And it's all these series
But you were doing
things.
Analytics before analytics.
But here's the thing.
Put together your own.
Here's the key. I only had this, it's like all these different things, but it's still driving the same thing that knocks down all the dominoes. So back to the 4 criteria of it's got to be part of your core business, has to be the right avatar, has to be your secret sauce. The other thing is it has to be strategic. What one thing will knock down all the other dominoes? And once you have the one thing, then you put all your effort in.
Well, congratulations. Awesome job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
man. I feel very blessed. Thank you, Ken.
You bet,
Honored to be with you.
Yeah, for sure.